You're watching The Experience, Comic Culture and Sales. Streaming live daily to Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter.
2, 1.
What's up, the internet? Producer Kyle, how's it going? The question of tonight, the show of tonight. Do awards matter? And I have a story to tell you that kind of sets up this conversation in a way that I think you'll understand why we're having it. The Experience is something that I was part of founding at the end of 2020. I have worked on this channel every day, including my days off, most of them, since then. I've poured my heart and soul and sweat and health into this channel. And it's been incredibly rewarding, right? We have such a great community, so many great people here. And we don't do it for the recognition, but this year we got nominated for some awards. And the truth of the matter is, the thing about those awards that are worthy, they're great. I'm glad we got nominated for those awards. We were so pumped up about getting nominated for these awards. And then we didn't even make it to the finals. And the disappointment of being the high of being nominated for an award, even an award that I didn't know existed 3 months ago, to the low of realizing you didn't even make the finals on something you've worked so incredibly hard on, is just incredible. It's just disheartening. It just crushes you. Now, I don't really care about awards. I'm not in this for awards. I'm not in this for recognition. But imagine you sat at a desk and drew hundreds of pages of comic books, poured your heart and soul into your storytelling, only to get nominated for an award and then not even be a finalist for it. And then to find out that being nominated for this award that you've worked so hard for this project you've worked so hard on, for this award that means so much to you, doesn't increase your readership, doesn't help you sell books, doesn't help you get the next job, it'd make you consider doing something else, wouldn't it? That's what we're going to figure out tonight on the Devil's Advocates. I'm producer Kyle. Bronze is in the background with a full belly, so we're not going to talk about food this episode, but we are going to talk about awards. So we'll be right back after this. Welcome in, everybody. We're glad you're here. Bronze is dealing with a small technical kerfuffle and will be here momentarily. I am producer Kyle. This is the Devil's Advocates. If you've never joined us before, we are going to talk about this topic from a couple of different perspectives, and he's ready to go. The man, the myth, the finalist for several awards, Bronze Age Nerd.
Winner of 2 previous awards that you can barely see up there, as a matter of fact.
So, yeah. We are here this week to talk about Do Awards Matter? And I asked some questions when I posted this on the Discords. And so I'm hoping that people come prepared to answer those questions. And we have some of them already in the comments.
Excellent.
So I'm very excited to talk to y'all about this stuff. Welcome in, Bronze. Congratulations on being a finalist for all the things you're a finalist for this year.
Well, I'm a finalist in one category this year. For the Comic Book Community Awards, but I did win 2 last year, which I'm very, very honored and privileged to have won. But yeah, it's a very controversial topic, especially when we're talking about these Comic Book Community Awards. That is something that is, it's amazing how much tension gets built up around those awards to me. It's not surprising, and yet it's still amazing.
Yeah, no, and it's like that with every award. Like,
Right.
So I've been involved in awarding a couple of comic book awards in the past, and it's always like this, right? But the thing that always, and this is my default setting, I can tell you my answer to this question right now, and it's that awards don't matter. Period. But it can absolutely be a killer when you are nominated for something and then don't even make it to the finals. So that's where I stand on this, and I've got some stuff to back it up, but I want to hear other people's opinions, and some of them are here. Preston says, yes, they matter. We don't celebrate great hair and beards enough. Well, that is fair. I was told by a checkout guy at the grocery store today that I look like a lumberjack. And it might have been the highlight of my month. So
I have thoughts, but I'll as somebody who has gotten that comment before and who is a lumberjack. No, yeah. I'm more of the son of a lumberjack and the grandson of a lumberjack and the great grandson of a lumberjack. And my high school mascot was the Lumberjacks. So I'm kind of a lumberjack by proxy. So
I don't know that I've ever known an actual lumberjack. Anyway, John Stout says, I think they're fun. They can increase awareness and bring viewers to channels that otherwise may get lost in the shuffle. I also think they reward creators that have stuck with it. That's fair. Like, there are good reasons for awards, but lumber snacks.
That's funny. Yeah, John, I love that you made that comment, because that was what I was going to say about highlighting awareness. Now, if the awards are struck, and just taking out, the comic book community awards are probably what everybody's going to automatically hear. Let's take them out of the equation, talking about all awards in general. If the awards are somehow popularity based, then it usually doesn't highlight something you're not aware of, in my experience. That isn't always true, because maybe there's a category that you just aren't very familiar with, and it's kind of cool to get acquainted with that category. But if it's a Academy style award where it's nominated by a panel and chosen by a panel of experts or people that are in that field, you can really find out about some cool things. Each one has its cons, though, that I'm highly astute and aware of. For example, like the Academy Awards, when it comes to Hollywood, are probably my least favorite award show. Now, I will learn about one or two, maybe 3 or 4 movies that I hadn't seen, and I enjoy those movies, and that's the part I like about it. But I get that experience from looking at the winners online after the whole thing's over, because it seems pretty pretentious to me personally. That's just how it feels. But when it comes to popular vote, People's Choice Awards, MTV Movie Awards, which I say that laughing, but back in the 90s, that was actually my favorite award show, because they had fun categories, and they had, everybody voted. Everybody got a vote on who should win these things. And that is an important component. When we get to talking more about the comic book community awards, the CBCA awards, that gets interesting, because there's another element to that. But yeah, it's one of those things that really can have pros and cons both ways.
Right. And I don't necessarily want to talk about the comic book community awards, because I think community awards fall into a different category than what I'm kind of talking about, right?
Yeah,
like, we can talk about them. I think if we don't talk about them, we're making a mistake there.
Yeah.
But I think awards as a whole, we need to kind of break it down, right? A community-driven award is an award that's voted on by the people. And like, the thing we were nominated for that we didn't make the finals of is comic book community awards. Okay. That was voted on by people. And those people might not watch the channel. They're probably not in the chat right now, by and large. And that's fine, right? Like, it just means that I have something to work towards and something to grow towards. But one of the other awards that I frequently have to interact with are the Ringo Awards.
Right.
Which is an award based on comic creation. And so often, what I hear from people is, oh, I got nominated for a Ringo Award, but I'm not a finalist. Or, I didn't even get nominated for a Ringo Award this year for this book I've gotten nominated for several times before. and people beginning to wonder, or people searching for that validation.
Yeah.
Right. Of awards. And then on the same token, people win awards and it doesn't help them. It doesn't do anything. And so a prime example is when Daredevil won the Eisner, when Mark Waid won the Eisner when he was writing Daredevil. It didn't help sales. It didn't mean he got to stay on Daredevil longer. Like, it did nothing that was actionable other than give Marvel a logo to put on the cover.
Hold on. Counterpoint to that. I by and large agree with you, Kyle. I really do. But I think it's important to point out that there are some things, some tack-on effects. Let's say you're Mark Waid. Mark Waid probably doesn't need a ton of help getting work at a major comic book company, but still, Mark Waid can add that to his resume. It can help him when he's booking con appearances. It can maybe give him a little bit more. I'm guessing here. I'm speculating. Maybe give him a little bit more creative control, or even if it's not Mark Waid in specifics, maybe it could be true for somebody who's kind of up and coming, right? Like, now you have that feather in your cap, and you're able to say, well, to editorial or whoever, maybe we do go this way with the storyline because that's really where I want to go. And even if you don't use that as a bargaining chip, maybe they give you a little bit more leeway. Maybe they put you on a title that you've been wanting to write, that you have a really cool idea for, that was harder to get into. It didn't help the sales on Daredevil, but helping that creator might help the sales of another book down the road and increase that creator's sort of personal capital, which is good, right?
Sure. But again, you don't see it all the time. I know a bunch of indie guys who get nominated for awards, but it doesn't help them book the next project. Right? If you're creating your own stuff and you get nominated for an award, that's not going to help you break in at Marvel or DC necessarily. If you win an award, it maybe is different, right? But that's the problem, is you have to get through the process and actually win, right? These awards. And so now you go through this process where you're nominated and you're campaigning and you're hoping you win and you're going, hey, I'm at least a nominee for this thing. And then you don't make the finals, you don't win, you don't do anything. Doesn't help you. But you're still a nominee. It's great to be nominated. Doesn't really help, but it's great to be nominated. It's the problem with awards, especially, as you said, voted on by like popular choice awards, is that they have no representation of what anyone is actually doing. It's about how well is your name recognized, right? If you put who was the best Venom artist on an award ballot and you put it in front of 1,000 people, how many of them are going to vote for Ryan Stegman and never consider somebody like Sam De La Rosa, who did a lot of work to define what the character looks like? That's a popularity contest and not an actual award. And so that's why I think there needs to be, when we talk about this, that we need to talk about the categories, right? Like, I'm a part of the Gary Reed Awards. Well, the way the Gary Reed Awards work is that anyone can nominate any comic book professional. The Gary Reed Independent Creator of the Year Award. Right? Then it comes to a board of people who determine of those who are the finalists. Right? People who are comic book professionals. And then from there, it goes to a further voting board who decides who the winner is. And that board reads the work that's been nominated and, finds out about the creators who have been nominated.
Yeah.
That kind of award, I think a nomination means a hell of a lot more than an award that was nominated by the people. Because now, it's not necessarily, or because once you get through that popular stage, your work has to stand on its own.
That's true. Yeah, it's true. I do think I like the blend of popularity mixed with, for lack of a better term, an esteemed panel deciding. I think that they're, because you're
juried awards is the word.
Juried awards. That's a great term. Thank you for teaching me that one, because you are giving some validation to what the masses enjoy. And then if, a step further, even if there's some moderation on who makes it in, even though, everybody voted for, oh boy, actually, that's a terrible, everybody voted for Batman because Batman's going to get in every year. Right. And regardless of how good it is, they look at the votes like, yeah, Batman got a load of votes, but so did this other title. And it actually deserves to get in more because we're more likely to vote for it in the end. I'm okay with that kind of moderation because maybe there's some dark horses they let in because of that. And I think that's valuable.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, if that's the kind of awards we're talking about, I think they're great. Right? I think letting the public or letting the masses decide, hey, we think this is award worthy. This is what we're paying attention to. And then letting people decide based on merit.
Yeah.
Is the most important thing. At the end of the day, awards should be based solely on merit.
Right.
And unfortunately, most of them are not meritocracies. Now, and that's part of the reason I don't want to talk about the comic book community awards, right? Because I don't know in what way that is structured, right? And
so that's what I can speak to, by the way.
Because it's a community award, I think it's different because of that too, and we can get into that in a minute, I guess.
Yeah. We'll peel back the bronze and Kyle curtain here for a second and just say that for a lot of reasons, I was a little late to the show, for example. Kyle and I didn't really have a chance to get on the same page before the show started, so we might have a little different idea on how things were going to go tonight. I will just throw out there that I do want to talk about the comic book community awards. For one thing, because I have a feeling a lot of people that tuned into this show specifically at this time will have that in mind and kind of, go over a little bit of how it works, a little bit of my thoughts on it. So that's one thing I'd like to touch on. It's not the only topic I want to talk about, though. So we definitely can get to it a little bit later in the show.
Mm-hmm. So, and the other reason we kind of scheduled this at this time is the Ringo Awards are this weekend.
Yeah.
And the Ringo Awards for a lot of years have been the awards that more than the Eisners, I've looked to as the benchmark of what's happening. Now, I will say this. The Ringo Awards have their flaws. Any award where Stan Sakai publishing a book wins Stan Sakai an award maybe needs to make a category best Stan Sakai rather than, and give other people a chance. Not that Stan doesn't deserve the recognition, because he absolutely does.
Yeah.
But the man is the king of the Ringos. That was the other reason we put this here, because I'm supposed to be there. I'm not going to be, but I was supposed to be. And so there's this thing again with like the Ringos where it's a juried selection, right? It's anyone can be nominated. Then it's voted on by comic book professionals. So people who work in the business, who see this work and can evaluate this work based on that. And the nominees, though, are culled by a board. So anybody can get nominated, and anybody can be voted for that makes it to the finals, but there's a board in the middle who's weeding stuff out. And so for years, I've relied on the Ringos as the benchmark. Correct, Sean. It does. That's kind of the point, right? It's the Ringos are this sort of melting pot of awards, whereas sometimes the Eisners are elite in the sense of you don't often see a guy who's crowdfunding his books get nominated for an Eisner. You do see them get nominated for Ringos.
That's cool.
Yeah. And I'm not saying it happens a lot, but they do get nominated for Ringos. And they almost exclusively get nominated for Gary Reed Awards. So, like, when you talk about your scale, if I'm on the board for your award, it's pretty low. But, it's that kind of thing. And so the thing that breaks my heart, Bronze, and it's why I'm able to talk about this kind of this way, is that I know a person who one year was nominated for their work for a Ringo and an Eisner. The next year they weren't. And the year after that, they went 8 months without getting hired to do anything.
Wow.
And had to go get a day job. Like, that's the difference, right? Like, that's why awards help, but they don't help. Because a guy who was a finalist for the Eisners and for the Ringos in the same year shouldn't be out of the business 2 years later because his work is clearly quality. Or is it? Or are the awards really just a way to prop up companies?
Well, but let me ask you the flip side, and I'm asking
Phil,
this genuinely.
Phil, they're still at Baltimore.
So we've discussed a little bit about what, you know, your position. You made it clear as far as what you think the pros may or may not be. I've made my position a little bit clear about what I think some of the pros are. But what are the cons to having the award show? In your opinion, like I have a couple kind of esoteric ones I could probably name, but I'm curious what you would say.
In an industry that is so populated with people who already have things like imposter syndrome, in things like mental health issues, sometimes things like confidence issues, building people up only to either tear them down by not letting them be finalists or by having them lose these awards to someone whose work they may feel is inferior to theirs certainly doesn't help with the people of the business.
Yeah.
Just because a book wins an award does not necessarily mean it's going to sell more books. So it doesn't help with the retail side of the business, with the sales side of the business. Your work may be great, but if you sell 2 copies, what good is it?
Right. That's kind of what I would have said.
What good is the award, at least? Your book may be fun. Your book may be great, but what good is the award if you only sell 2 copies? And the third thing I would say, and this is awards in general, is it creates this level of them versus us.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the award winners. Those are the big hitters. Those are the people I need to be worried about. Those are the people I need to be emulating or chasing. When what you really need to focus on is just doing what you do. And this is another one of those areas where I think the comic book community awards are excellent because it's rewarding people for doing what they do.
Yeah.
On that level, right? You get nominated, you make a finalist. It's because the content you make has been deemed to be award worthy. So it's this idea of creating an us versus them is also not good for growth. People need to just work on, doing what they do.
Shout out to Bleecker Street, who is nominated for a comic book community award in the best hair category. And unfortunately will ultimately lose to Comic Man Andy for best beard, but you know, it's great, man. Yeah, great to be nominated, right?
So, like I said, that's kind of the cons, right? I don't.
Okay.
I'll give you another example from outside of comics, which is an interesting thing for me. We are preparing to go to the World Food Championships to compete in barbecue.
Right.
One of the things that goes into that is looking at who you're going to be competing against, because you want to know who you're up against. And immediately we start going through the list and it's, oh, they're so good. They're a heavy hitter. They're the best, or they've got 8 or 9 rubs they've put out. They've got sauces. They've got 13 restaurant locations. And all of a sudden we're comparing ourselves to somebody else who we've never heard of or met.
Yeah.
They might be the nicest people in the world. They might not be that good of a barbecue team. They may have just qualified for this thing. You have no way of knowing. Myron Mixon will be there as a judge. He's not competing. By the way, the 3 times we've competed against that guy, we've kicked that ass. So just throwing that out there. But
kick that pork butt.
Yeah. But I'm just saying, like, you're comparing yourself to somebody else with no real qualifications to compare yourself to them. And that's the you know, that's the real drawback I see to awards.
We are sponsored by Big Food, just so everybody is aware. Big Food definitely puts on this show. But let's just be happy we're not talking about my restaurant experience I just had, and we're talking about this instead, because this sounds way more delicious.
Sean, just drive to Dallas in November. We'll talk about it. And Preston, I really did try not to, because I ate before the show, which I don't normally do, and I know Bronze ate before the show, which he doesn't normally do. So,
did I though? Did I?
Well, okay, that's fair. We tried. Anyway, but I'll give you another example. This year, nominated for Best Awards. I'm not trying to tempt you, Sean. I'm inviting you. Anyway, for movie awards, Tar was nominated in the same category as a movie like Women Talking for Best Picture, in the same category as Top Gun Maverick. Those movies could not be more dissimilar if you tried to make them dissimilar. But they all get compared and lumped into one thing, rather than being compared to other like things. And I think that is also sort of a problem with these big awards.
So my counterpoint on the points that you made, you know, just to kind of provide this, because I completely agree with your cons. When I said I had some esoteric reasons, those are the ones that I was thinking of. And I mean that I'm using that wording correctly. What I'm really thinking of is I was kind of on the fly thinking about some cons that were going to be a little bit more of like that outside perspective, thinking about different awards, not just comic book related awards. But I will say the other thing that I don't think we've directly mentioned that can happen, and your last example is what made me think about it. Having those movies that are nominated in the same category that are dissimilar, and they don't necessarily need to be competing against each other, in our opinion, does get people talking. It gets people having discussion. And I bring that up because I think it's a real factor, because it could get somebody to read something. You know, not only could somebody winning get somebody to read something, but also you look at something, you're like, what is that? And why is it in this category that I really love? It might get you, in relation to the comic book community awards, it might get you watching. I did some of that myself earlier today because there were some channels I was unfamiliar with. And then in terms of comic books, you might go, wow, or movies, or what doesn't really matter, anything. You might go, oh, well, that's interesting. I should probably check that out.
Can I tell you? That's exactly why on my pull list at my LCS, I get every Fantagraphics book. Is because one year I decided to read every book that was nominated for an Eisner. And a lot of them were Fantagraphics, and I really loved Fantagraphics books. They do some really weird, obscure, interesting stuff that I just love.
Nice.
And so that is a huge plus. And in my opinion, it's maybe the biggest plus, is that they do introduce you to things you didn't know. Right? They are great for that.
Yeah. Bleeker, I think it's possible you may have joined in progress. And this might be what I was talking about a little bit earlier. We are not just talking about the comic book community awards. We are talking about comics awards more in general. And I think originally we were going to more talk about industry awards, but it's kind of morphed a little bit as we mentioned earlier. So just to kind of catch you up, I'm planning on talking about comic book community awards in a little bit, and I'm sure Kyle has some stuff to say. But this is more industry focused.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is I have for years lumped all awards into one thing.
Yeah.
Right. And that's why I keep saying I think we need to have categories, right? We need to make sure we're separating a community award, right, where it's voted on by a community of people, versus a juried selection award, versus a industry driven award, versus something like the Oscars, where it's, cloak and dagger run by the Illuminati, whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know how the Oscars work.
No, I think you nailed it, actually. That's how it works.
Right. Versus the Tony Awards, where all I want to do is see people sing and dance.
Yeah.
I think having these categories and breaking down awards on that kind of macro level, that micro level, that very small, getting really into the weeds, is super important.
Yeah.
Because it helps frame how you feel about awards.
So while we're talking about that, Sean made the comment about putting some focus. He sounds like he's indie focused, and he's looking at some stuff from DC and Marvel. And I just wanted to kind of echo that. For me, it helps in the opposite way. I just real briefly, I really have fallen out of love with current Marvel and DC stuff, but that's primarily what I read, and I love seeing winners. Like, I don't pay attention to nominees for when it comes to most of these things. I do for the Comic Book Community Awards because I've been nominated the last couple of years. But when it comes to these kinds of awards, it's just my kind of personality. I don't really want to see how the sausage is made, but I am curious who the winners are. I probably should pay more attention to that. I'm willing to admit that because of what I do, but I just want to see the winners. And then when I see the winners, I am more likely to find indie books that I want to go read because of that. So I think that, that speaks to some of the actual benefits that can be involved there.
Right. And I think how it breaks down also, and like how you come down on this issue, certainly is affected by how you access the business.
Yeah.
So I know Sean is a big supporter of Kickstarter comics. He gets a lot of his books from that platform. So he's dealing more in super indie, small, self-published, small press stuff. So he might not see all of the stuff that's coming out from Marvel and DC all the time because the way he accesses the biz is through Kickstarter.
Yeah.
And what the Eisners do is it elevates, or the Ringos, or some of these awards, elevates the cream of the crop from those big publishers that you might just be like, look, Marvel puts out so many damn books. DC puts out so many damn books. And then they've got variant covers. They got all these reasons to not interact with those companies that everyone has. Well, if you only look at what gets nominated, it makes those really small bite-sized chunks that you can actually check out. And you find a guy like, I remember I had never really paid attention to Evan Doc Shaner as an artist. Like, I knew who he was, but I'd never really paid attention to it until he got nominated for that Superman book he did. Superman blue, red, white, and blue. Superman something
like that.
And he got nominated for these beautiful, I think they're watercolors that were, and now I'm a huge fan of him. So I think how you access the business and how you access the community matters a lot too.
Agreed. I absolutely agree with that. Should we talk about Comic Book Community Awards now, or do you?
Yeah,
want
absolutely.
To? Okay.
I would love to. And this is, so when I referenced during the cold open an award I didn't know existed 3 months ago, this is the award I was talking about. Right? I knew they existed because I knew Bronze had won. But like, I didn't understand how the process worked. I didn't understand any of it. So that's the one that was like, oh, great, we're nominated. Oh, we're not even finalists? Well, that's disappointing.
Yeah, and that's a perfect segue to actually talking about this, because I've talked about this a few times with people in the community on streams, and that's the best way to talk about it is to actually explain it, because I've noticed when you mention the Comic Book Community Awards, a lot of people are like, huh, what's that? Because there's not a lot of exposure to it, and then there's also a lot of misunderstandings about it. So what are the Comic Book Community Awards? They were started, this is the third year of it. They were started 3 years ago by a guy who goes online as Brian LCS. All it is one person who decided, hey, it would be cool if the comic book community had its own award show. And I also want to point out that the comic book community part of it primarily is talking about YouTube. I think those things get a little confusing for people, because you hear that and you think, oh, well, I'm in the comic book community. And you might also think of some professionals and industry people that are in the community as well, right? So that's what it really means. It's kind of the YouTube Comic Book Community Awards. I would maybe go a step further and say it's more of a social media comic book community award, because it does kind of take place in other places as well a little bit. That's awesome. So here's how it works. There is a period of nominations, And what that is you go to a web form. It's a Google document form. And there are a series of categories that Brian created. I know that, at different points, he's gotten input from people like an advisory board that he's kind of put together, and also just people in the community about what to include there. Sometimes he's listened to that more than others, but he's created these categories, and it's just a blank field. It'll be like favorite collaborative YouTube or favorite collaborative comic book channel. I'll get to that in a second because that's kind of a confusing category, but let's just say that's one of the categories. And you go ahead and fill in whoever you want. You say, like, I really like this channel's collaborations. That's who I'm nominating. Then, as I understand it, from what I know, they tally. He just tallies the nominations. Goes through and does a little work to make sure a channel is actually eligible for the category that it was nominated in. For example, if somebody nominates a cleaning and pressing, best cleaner and presser tutorial video, or your favorite cleaner and presser tutorial, and he goes to that channel, he can't find a single video that person's ever done about cleaning and pressing, they might kick that one out, right? Kind of depends. I think they kind of lean towards leaving it in, but if it's pretty obvious it shouldn't be left in, they kick it out. So then they take who gets the most nominations, so essentially like a vote in each of those categories, the top 5, and they move them forward to who can be considered for contention in that category. And then there's a period where all the nominees were announced, so everybody that got nominated at all. And now we've entered a period of voting on those categories, and that's a long explanation, but I think it's important because there's a lot of assumptions get made, like who is this guy to say who should be nominated? I hear that a lot from creators, especially who didn't get nominated. And the real trick is, if you wanted to mobilize your fan base, especially if you're a larger channel, which can be problematic, to say, hey, go nominate me for these awards, your odds and likelihood of getting into the finalists of the category would have been exponentially higher. If you're a channel that has 50,000 subscribers and you go out there and you regularly get a lot of views and you go out there and say, go vote for me in this category, you are much more likely to get in than a channel with 1,000 subscribers where, let's say 10% of their subscribers went and actually voted for you. That's 100 people. If 10% of the other guy, that's 5,000 people. So numbers do play into it, and that's where the popularity contest does come into play. But also, there's a lot of those big channels that don't even know about the awards or not familiar with it. One of the channels that I nominated was Comic Tropes. He's a huge channel with over 200,000 subscribers. And he got in this year for the first time. I've nominated him every year I've done it. And I told him, I was like, hey, Chris, you got nominated in for this award. And he was like, I had no idea that existed. That's awesome. And now he's aware of that. He's talked to his fan base about it. So his fan base is going and voting. It's bringing more people with putting eyeballs onto things. Now I will be, I don't know if Kyle would want to say this, but I'll be honest. I campaigned this much near the end for the EXP to get nominated in a couple categories. Of course, I campaigned for Devil's Advocates. I never ever go and nominate myself or campaign for myself too much. I might say, hey, voting's available. That's about it. But for the EXP, I went and did it because I have a different approach on how I do things on my channel. For the EXP, like, I believe in this. There's a lot of other people involved. It's not just me, and I want to get eyeballs on it. Unfortunately, the EXP didn't make it to that final set of nominees, but it was nominated. And you know what? Next year, I have really good feelings that you'll be seeing a lot more of the EXP on those ballots. But that's kind of the overview of what it is. So when you talk about people,
and I will say this, and I just real quick.
Yeah, please do.
I set up the show sort of complaining about that, right? That was my cold open. We got nominated for this thing and we didn't get...
Yeah.
I did it because it's the cold open for the show and I need to set up the topic. I'm thrilled.
You look thrilled.
Okay. Well, no, I just got an alert from Apple that number 9 Clemson is down 21-7 against unranked Duke in football. And my brain cannot register those words in a sentence. Anyway, I'm thrilled to have been nominated. And again, I don't do this for the awards. I don't do this for the recognition. I don't, Preston, I would love it, but there would be no contest. I would literally smoke these turkeys. But the thing about it is that I still had those same thoughts about, God, I don't think what some of these channels that are nominated for these things are doing is better than what we're doing. So why are they finalists and we're not? I didn't politic. I didn't campaign. I didn't push.
I will personally
Fine.
vouch for that, by the way.
Right. That's fine. I was Melon Mogg from SketchUp on Thursday nights got nominated. I wanted them so badly to be finalists, to show that they're doing great work. Or Comic Collectibles got nominated. I wanted them to do great work because they're doing great work. I don't care about me, but I still had those thoughts. And so the thing about the Comic Book Community Awards is that because they're voted on by the community, because it's a thing that you need to mobilize your fandom to do, because of the way the nominations and things work, personally, the nomination means more to me than the award.
Yeah.
It would be different if this was a bunch of comics YouTubers voting for who they think the best comics YouTubers are. If it was a YouTube industry award, if this was the Streamies, I would be pissed to not be a finalist, because I think so many people who win Streamy awards are not doing as good a work as we're doing. Now, I'm not going to compete with Rhett and Link, or the guys from Dropout.tv,
Pat McAfee,
or Mr. Beast.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I would feel differently because those are not community awards.
Right.
So
And
I recognize that what I said may have looked like a slight against one particular award. It was not. It was just a thing I could speak to from real existence.
Well, and I can personally attest to, unless he found out on his own, which I'm pretty sure he didn't. Kyle didn't know about any of that until I just explained it on stream. Like, the extent of the conversations we had were, hey, we should probably try to tell people on shows to not. And this was like during the last few days of the competition for the nominations. I did want to highlight Dan Wickline's comment here, because he says awards have a negative effect on me. Like with movie awards, rarely are the films I enjoy being nominated. So if it gets a lot of hype, it makes me think it's not for me. Comic awards seem to be the same. And I just wanted to speak to that, because the point I was getting ready to make about comic book community awards are, when you talk about those negative effects, the tack-on effects it can have, I have seen so many channels get mad, get frustrated. They feel like their work isn't being recognized. They feel like, and really, here's the comment I see over and over and over again from people. I'm watching a very popular channel, and that person complains that they weren't nominated. Well, what are these awards if I wasn't nominated? And of course, their viewers are all go, yeah, you're right, because we're watching you right now. And that's understandable. It's understandable that they feel that way, but it's also, I think, in some ways coming from a place of ignorance of how the awards work. And the irony is that a lot of those channels, have tens of thousands of subscribers. And if you go look at these awards, you will see that some of those channels get nominated, a few of them over and over and over again, but for the most part, they don't. Those really huge channels have not been nominated by and large. And by the way, huge channels in the comic book community is kind of an oxymoron, because there really aren't a ton of us. There's like Comics Explained and Comics Historian and a few others, but for the most part, we're pretty small potatoes compared to the Rhett and Links and the Mr. Beasts of the world and all that. But hey, we matter. It's a segment of the internet that we all care about if you're here right now. And I think that it is unfortunately something that, when you talk about mental health, I've talked to people that it really, they're talking to me offline. They're not out there talking about on their channel. You can tell those people are mad when they do that. But when the people I talk to offline, they are imposter syndrome. They're feeling like, why am I even doing this? YouTube is a pretty thankless thing for most people, and it's a lot of work. And the mental burnout aspect, you may have heard about it. It's very real. It's very, very real. And unfortunately, a lot of people devote a lot of time to this, and then to not see those efforts recognized can be heartbreaking. And I think that's a very, very deserving aspect that needs to be discussed. At the same time, folks, this is one guy who created these awards. If you really want better awards out there and you're pissed off about it, go make your own. Go make your own awards. That's my advice, because it really was one person who was motivated to do this. They wanted to make it a big deal, and they kind of have.
Yeah, and I tell you, the Gary Reed Award, which is an award that I'm very keenly associated with, and I love, and I'm very protective of. The Gary Reed Independent Creator of the Year Award was created to hold the memory of Gary Reed, who founded Caliber Comics and who shepherded so many legends in the industry. Jim O'Barr, Joe Pruitt, Bob Burden, all these guys. Gary sort of was their mentor. Gary passed away 2 weeks after the convention where we give away the award a number of years back. And the award was created to shepherd his memory, because we didn't feel like the guys who were really doing the work in independent books of bringing others along and growing independent comics and, giving people a chance to get started, we're getting recognized by the big awards like the Eisners and the Ringos. And that has since changed. The industry has come alongside those people in such a big way in the last 8 to 10 years that it makes our little award more meaningful in some ways, because it was there and it holds the name of the guy who had done it for years. But it also means that our little award sees a much smaller audience all the time. And, it sucks, but I tell you, to watch a guy like Joe Pruitt break down and cry because he won the award, because that's what Gary meant to him, is one of the things that awards can do right. It can remind you why you do what you do. Aftershock going through a lot, and Joe's been going through a lot. And to give him an award to remind him where he started and to remind him what he's done is, I think, hugely important. And I think that's what the community awards have the ability to do. Right? It's the people who you're affecting voting for you for affecting them. And I think that's a big, big plus that the comic book community awards can bring, that user-generated awards can bring. If you don't like the landscape of awards, change them. I think that's a huge takeaway, and I'm so glad you brought it up. I hadn't thought of that, Bronze. And K-pop, I've been streaming for 15 years, talking about, being nominated for awards and things like it. Validation is so important. And so it's super I don't even know how to say it in a clearer way. It's super important for you, even if you aren't voting for awards, nominating people for awards, tell the people who make the stuff you like that you like it.
Yeah.
I heard a story on TikTok, and I don't know how, I didn't fact check, but about a guy who had been posting videos on YouTube for almost 10 years of himself and his setups when he goes camping. He camps 3 or 4 days a week. Like, that's what he likes to do. He travels and he camps out. And he makes little videos of, here's my campsite, and here's my review of this campground and this place to camp. And some of his biggest videos had like 6 views. And then somebody saw it and was like, this guy is great. He's honest. He's genuine. And they put it on TikTok. And the guy got 20 million views in 3 days because someone liked what he was doing and told them they liked it and said, let me help you.
Yeah.
And Bronze saying, hey, we should try and get nominated for this thing. Okay. Never heard of it. What are we doing? And So him saying, "Hey, I think your channel is worthy of being considered," means as much to me as if we had won an award. It probably means more to me than if we had won an award. So that, I think, is my big takeaway, on this one. Like, hey, yo, tell the people you like that you like their stuff.
Yeah. And also, like, I'll just say that, that's great advice in general, not to make it specific again. I'm going to paste this in the chat. There's the words for the CBCA. Go vote. Go vote. Here's what I do. Here's my recommendation. If there's a channel, if there's a category where you don't know any of the channels, go check them out if you want to. If you don't want to, that's fine. Just skip the category. But go check them out. Go see, are there any people in here that I've supported over the years that I'm friends with, that I think deserve it? And go vote for them if you want to, of course. Or check out the system, or do both. Check out the system, see what you think, see if you could do better. At the end of the awards, there's a little review stream that happens on Brian LCS's channel. And I think there's a lot of people out there that we didn't really get into this. There's a lot of people out there that have criticism of the categories and the way things are worded, or, the way they're structured or whatever. Constructive criticism. Don't go in and be toxic to somebody who's also a streamer and YouTuber. Please. Give constructive criticism about what you'd like to see changed if you want, or if you don't want to go do your own thing, or even if you do. If 100 little award shows popped up, maybe it'd be cool, maybe it'd be weird, whatever, but maybe a couple of them would take off and we could have some, I think competition is usually a good thing in a space. It usually brings every party up a little bit more, can anyway. So that's just my advice. Next year, get familiar with the site. Next year, I highly recommend nominating the EXP for categories you think it's appropriate for. I think it's going to be even more worthy of your nominations next year, but nominate who you want.
Next year, to be nominated for best bowling channel. If you got K-pop Junkie and Actual Dracula, I don't know if they have them where you are, but I just joined a terrible bowlers league. Basically, it's an excuse to eat pizza and all dress alike. And you only have to knock down 9 pins to get a strike. And the person who has the lowest score for the year gets the biggest trophy. So,
or worst, I don't know. You decide. Most consistent food talk on a comic book channel.
We talk about food around here a lot.
We literally made it a thing because when I came on your show we had before this, we talked about cheesecake.
Well, but even the other shows talk about food a lot. Like on Nerd News Now, we almost always talk about food. Rex and John are always talking about spam on Comic Collectibles. Like there is a lot of food talk on the experience.
That's true. Hungry comic collectors. But yeah, it's one of those things where, like, at the end of the day, I'll honestly just tell you my final thoughts here. Like, I think I'm a very big pros and cons. There's a balance to everything. There's compromises you need to make for everything. I think award shows can have a positive effect. I think they can get better at what they do, and I think they shouldn't be taken too seriously. If you don't like what's going on in an award show, like Kyle said, if somebody gives you a compliment about your channel, I can't speak for you watching this if you're a creator out there, or if you're a comic book creator or a YouTube content creator. But for me personally, if I get a comment, I get comments every once in a while, like my son or my daughter and I watch your show and we watch it together every time you post a video. That means a lot to me. It means way more than the awards I won last year. It means way more than being nominated. That means a lot to me. But having a parent and their child spend time together watching my show, man, that seriously affected me. Like that was my motivation to keep doing this when I started getting comments like that. I can't stress enough how much that means. So go, like Katie said, Katie is K-pop. She said earlier, if you don't like the awards, go support the channels out there that you like. 100%. That's what you should do. do whatever makes you feel comfortable, but don't forget to support those creators. You know, liking and doing all those things that YouTubers tell you to do all the time makes a big difference. It really does in their lives. You know, maybe you're somebody who doesn't like to comment, you're a lurker. That's fine too. That's totally fine. But make sure you're doing those little things you can where you can.
We love lurkers.
Yes.
Well, Bronze, we have talked an entire hour and we never opened the phone lines.
True.
Which is a whole thing. So I guess at the end, good luck on the Comic Book Community Awards, man. I hope you win.
Thank you.
I hope everybody who's nominated. I hope everybody who's nominated can win.
Yeah.
Including if you're nominated in multiple categories with other people who are also here who are nominated in those same categories. I hope it's a tie. And if there's a tiebreaker that you have to like kick each other in the shins until one of you falls down to determine the winner.
I feel like most of the awards should be that. Make it a real competition. I guess right. I never said, I should say, if you're curious, I was nominated for Best Speculation and Investing Content for a channel with under 5,000 subscribers, which I still qualify for. If you're like, hey, that sounds terrible. I know a lot of people are anti-speculation. That's the kind of speculation content I make. I make anti-FOMO content on my channel to kind of say, I wouldn't invest in these comic books. So, yeah, I guess I should probably have mentioned that. But,
man,
yeah.
Everybody over here has got suggestions on how you could settle a tie in the Comic Book Community Awards. I think if anyone has ever watched the show Taskmaster from the BBC, that they should solve it the way they do it there, which is by making you do increasingly embarrassing tasks until there's a clear winner. So, you know.
I love it. I love it. Dan, in the comic book community, that's
asking to go blind.
I mean, there are no winners in that competition.
I will say this, Dan, just the people between you and the people on this show, the three of us, like, we would have to like take separate elevators going places. Like, so us Jello wrestling,
not a good idea.
Jello eating, maybe.
Yeah, some people are masochists, though. You know.
All right, we gotta stop before this gets out of hand. Everybody, tune in next week where Bronze and I will be talking about another topic. I don't remember what topic we agreed upon because we had it picked out, but I don't remember anymore.
Yeah, we'll figure it out.
We've been talking about another topic. And if you're in Baltimore, make sure you congratulate people who are nominated on for the Ringo Awards. I will not be there this year, even though I was supposed to be. That's not happening. It's a whole thing. But enjoy yourself. And we will be back next week. Tune in this week for all the great programming here on The Experience and all the great programming that everybody is making. Spend as much time watching great content as you can and tell the people you like that you like them.
Join the party. Head over to our link tree to find all the links for everywhere The Experience is all the time.